Hey, what's up guys? So today we are going to be talking about Wolverine issue number 1 of the 2020 solo series. I've been waiting on this issue. I even got this variant. I'm not exactly sure who drew this variant. I'll probably check or maybe put it in the actual video when I'm editing. But yeah, as soon as I saw this variant like online, I knew I had to have it. And so my usual comic book shop did not have this one and I was pretty disappointed. But I went to another comic book shop and behind a whole bunch of other variants, they had this last one, so I had to cop it. Yeah, I just thought it was like, it's the best. But anyway guys, I've been really waiting on this Wolverine solo series. It's written by Benjamin Percy, drawn by Adam Kubert, who is a great artist. I believe he's done Wolverine in the past, and I think it's colored by the same person who's coloring Thor right now, Matt Wilson, so that's awesome as well. Now this book is kind of like a two-parter almost. Like there's a one story in the beginning and there's another story at the end, like a one part and a two part. It's like 60 some pages of story, maybe a little bit less, but it's a fairly big book. So I'm gonna kind of go into the first part and then I'll go into the second part, obviously, how parts work. I'm just gonna talk about the things that I think are actually gonna come because there's a lot of stuff in here that's kind of confusing. This whole series is taking place in this new House of X, Powers of X era. This whole thing was started by Jonathan Hickman, which if you don't know, Jonathan Hickman, he has a very big brain and you can tell when you read his stuff, like he is just so smart. I read his stuff sometimes, I'm just like, oh my God, this guy, he's on like a different level right now and he's working and building towards different levels while I'm just trying to get to the next level. I was really excited for this series because Benjamin Percy, he has been writing X-Force and I absolutely loved X-Force. So when I heard he was gonna do Wolverine, I was like, this is like the perfect thing. X-Force is so action-packed and so good and I just knew that he would be right for this. Without any further ado, let's get into it. So the first part of this book opens up in Alaska and it opens up with Wolverine recovering and healing from something pretty gruesome. Like he's battered up, he's like damaged all the way down to his skeleton, and we also see that the rest of X-Force is with him, Jean Grey, Domino, and Kid Omega, and they're actually dead. Find out that Wolverine was actually the one who killed them, but not on his own accord, of course. He was influenced by somebody, and now he's following their tracks in the Alaskan snow. At this point in the book, or at least I think for a lot of people reading X-Men now, when I first saw this in this comic, I was like, kind of like, oh, like he just killed his friends. But then they have resurrection. Mutants can like live like forever now with the resurrection that they have right now. So death kind of doesn't mean that much in an X-Men comic anymore, which kind of sucks. It takes away the gravity of it because like if there was no resurrection protocol, then this would be really deep and I would feel kind of for this. But since I know that they can just come back, it's kind of doesn't hit me as hard as I think it would have. But we continue on. The book jumps back 5 days prior to this event and it shows Wolverine playing with some of the Krakoan kids hide and seek. They see it as hide and seek, but he sees it as, you know, training them to always be alert and be aware because on Krakoa he thinks things are too good, like, and he doesn't trust that, so he wants to stay with his senses up. Like he doesn't want to get too calm and too at peace, too at ease, because he's worried, you know, something's gonna happen. Jean calls him and she lets him know Kitty Pryde is actually needing him on the Hellfire side of the island, so he goes over there. Him and Kitty have like a little moment, they share a drink. Kitty Pryde is just hitting on the fact that Wolverine would do anything to protect Krakoa and everything that's here now because he loves it so much, and she's trying to get, you know, really touchy-feely, but if you know Wolverine, if you know Logan, he's not about that, and so he wants her to cut to the chase. If you aren't reading Marauders, it's basically about the Hellfire Trading Club. Krakoa, they transport these Krakoan medicines. They're like flower petals. These flower petals are basically medicine for humans. They can help extend human life. They can cure, I believe, like a bunch of diseases. I'm not too sure. That was in House of X. Can't really recall too much, but they're medicine for humans. They deliver these medicines for countries that they have treaties with that recognize Krakoa as a sovereign nation. Kitty, she works for the Marauders and she goes on the ships that ship out these medicines, and lately they've been losing shipments. Like shipments have just been going. They're very suspect of this. They actually have like farms of these Krakoan flowers like on Mars in the Savage Land, so it's pretty crazy like the reach of Krakoa in the Marvel universe now. I just think that's really cool. They've been going missing, and in a previous X-Men comic, I think it was X-Men 3 or 2, there was like a gang of old ladies. I think it's called like the Flower Gang or the Flower Cartel, some crazy like old grandma gang with like super powerful weapons came and they started stealing these flowers. Cutting back to this basically, so I believe that's gonna work itself into this storyline as well. So after that we cut to this crime scene with this guy Agent Bannister. He's reviewing this crime scene, which is basically like a mutant meth lab. Whoever's been taking these petals, they have been changing them or cooking up this thing called pollen, which is a new drug, and we see in this crime scene that all the people that were in the lab have self-inflicted damage. So nobody went to go and kill the people in this lab, they all did it to themselves, which is obviously pretty crazy, right? And then we get an exposition page. I know a lot of people complain about these. They have a lot of useful information, but I mean, hey, I want to see some art. Can you show me this through art? But it is what it is. Basically, we get an exposition page of the Order of X, which is a religious cult for mutants. Like, they praise mutants. They think mutants are gods, that if they follow mutants, they'll be more like gods themselves. So basically, that's what you need to know about Order of X. And so we get back to Wolverine, and it's 4 days prior to the event in Alaska where we began at the beginning of the book. We see Wolverine talking to Sage in some Krakoan lab. They're basically trying to triangulate where they can find and put a stop to the people who have this pollen. So they find an area outside of Russia, and so X-Force is sent to investigate. We cut back to that same Baltimore CIA agent, and we find out that this pollen, this drug, it enhances people and makes them think that they're 2 times stronger, 2 times smarter than what they actually are. And we also find out that this Agent Bannister has a sick daughter that is in need of that Krakoan medicine, and he's very pissed off that people are stealing these shipments because she's on a wait list. So we get that emotional tie-in, which is, ain't that the best motivation in a story? A sick child who needs medicine. Makes me think of one of the greatest movies of all time. No, but see X-Force teleport directly into the Order of the X cult, and they're going like apeshit over it. They think it's a miracle. Like, look, the gods have come before us. Like, this is awesome. Let's drink communion. Their communion, you know, like when you go to church or whatever, like you're Christian or Catholic, you go and you take the communion, the wine or whatever. Their communion is pollen, or I guess, I don't know if they know it's pollen or whatever, but they think because it comes from Krakoa, it will make them more like mutants. But it's not going to do that. It's going to make them some kind of mutant human hybrid. The pollen makes them freak out, so X-Force is trying to neutralize that. They're not trying to kill them, but there's some pretty good action in this scene right now, and the pollen eventually actually kills them. We got this crazy drug out now. Now X-Force is worried about this drug actually killing people. Cut to 1 day before the events in Alaska, and we see Logan confronting these dudes in the bar, and it turns out that they were the ones who sold the cult that pollen, but it was like drugs cut with pollen. He's interrogating them, and he finds that out, and he also finds that these guys, these gangsters, were actually working with the Flower Gang, but they took like 80% of the cut. That was the only way they could get their hands on pollen, so they just started stealing it from other places like Sokovia, and they thought they could do their own thing. But the person who they were working for, this woman called the Pale Girl, I guess she's associated with the Flower Gang, or maybe that she's their enforcer, but basically she doesn't like that. You can't get pollen unless you work with the Flower Gang. She made the dude like burn his own eye out. It's pretty gruesome. So basically this lady can like control anybody, and in the bar itself they have these cyanic dampeners. So they're very worried about this Pale Girl coming back, and it cuts back to the previous day in Alaska, and Logan actually is following the tracks, and he sees the Pale Girl, and he was like, it was you're the one who did this. As soon as he can confront her, she disappeared. And that's pretty much the end of the first book. That was pretty crazy. I didn't think too much of this Flower Gang. I don't think a lot of people did. I still don't. Like, I thought it was pretty funny, this group of old ladies just coming and like taking flowers, but it looks like it's gonna get a lot bigger than what it is. Pollen is gonna be a serious threat. So let's move on to the part 2 of this book. So this second part opens up with Wolverine on Krakoa, and he's kind of like taking his own little travel, just running across Krakoa, and he's reflecting on how like crazy it is that now people like Apocalypse and Magneto, like people that were once enemies, like hardcore enemies of not just mutants but of Earth and humans and everything, people who wanted to end the world, are now like his neighbors. Like they're all like not cool, but they're like kind of like partners in this journey or whatever. He's also reflecting on how he used to be and how he's trying to stay aware and alert, and just he has this mindset on Krakoa that it's too good to be true. If he is ever at ease, he's gonna get hurt. So he just does not want to be caught lacking, basically. That's basically Wolverine on Krakoa. You ain't gonna catch me lacking. That's pretty much his mindset. He reflects also on his past and how, like, if I can change, maybe these people can change too, because, you know, Wolverine used to not be the best guy. And then we see Omega Red come in from one of the Krakoan gateways. Wolverine just ignores all of what he was just thinking, and he goes straight to attack mode, but he is stopped by Magneto just in time. Omega Red is looking for amnesty. He's looking for a place to be. He heard that, you know, Krakoa allows amnesty for all mutants, and at this point, when he comes through the gateway, he is like covered in blood. He just looked how Omega Red would look, like just like a monster. And so Magneto is like, he's upholding the Krakoan rules, and he's really emphasizing that these are all rules. You weren't too different from him. We have to do these things. We are a nation. And he sends Logan off to find out where the hell Omega Red came from and like what the hell he got himself into, that he's all covered in blood. That is his own, by the way. And so Logan is transported through the gateway, and he ends up in Paris, and he is eventually led to this trunk, and it's filled with like blood bloody, gruesome bodies, and one of them actually pops up and is like, oh, you're just like him. And this is actually a really good shot. This is actually a really cool and nice panel. Like the art I really like in this panel. I really like how Wolverine is kind of reflecting. He's kind of like thinking about like how people can change, kind of puts himself in the shoes of these horrible like mutants. He was one before and he's changed now, but is he still that, or is he better? And if he is, can these other mutants actually be like that too? Which is pretty deep. So Wolverine really doesn't trust Omega Red. I mean, the beef that they've had, the history that they've had with one another, why would he? Especially Omega Red, right? He goes to where Omega Red is being held at in his holding cell on Krakoa, and he has like a kind of one-on-one with him, like asking him, you know, like telling him he doesn't trust him, and why should I believe you that you've changed or that you're not the monster that I know? And Omega Red throughout the book is implying that he has changed, and he kind of does it a little bit convincingly, like at least to the reader, not so much to Wolverine. Omega Red tells him like, hey, like if you want to find out what happened, you have to go to this place called the Oubliette. And he goes back to Paris to this little bar called the Oubliette, and before he actually goes to the bar, Logan meets this girl, wants to buy her a drink, but she doesn't take the offer, and he goes into this bar. It's super weird, it smells weird. What ends up happening, he's in a vampire bar. Vampires attack him. They have a sedative, like he drank a sedative. When he wakes up, he's like hanging upside down, and they actually tap him. A Wolverine keg, basically. They just start draining his blood and drinking him, and obviously this pisses Wolverine right off. He goes into attack mode, starts killing everyone, and the lady that he actually met comes and helps him out, and it turns out she's an actual vampire hunter. We cut back to Wolverine in Omega Red's holding cell, and basically Omega Red, he had killed vampires, so technically they weren't even living. They were undead things, and they're vampires, right? Who cares if they're dead? And even then, Omega Red is trying to prove that he is changed and that he's not necessarily a good guy, but he's not the monster that he was. He's like, I've been sustaining myself off of like animals, like deer. He's not killing people anymore, and that Wolverine really needs to change perspective on him. He's a mutant, he's his mutant brother, right? But Logan obviously is not having that. So after this, Wolverine links up with the vampire hunter lady, and they go to the Paris catacombs where all of the vampires, I guess where their lair is. They fall into this booby trap, into this like spike ditch. Vampires just come and attack them. They fight them a little bit, but the lady actually gets caught by the vampires, and so in a hostage situation, Logan let the vampires feast on him in exchange for her safety, and they just wanted to drink from Logan's blood, and they dip. I think there's something to be said about Logan's blood, because there's a page of exposition that I didn't go over right now about blood, about vampire blood and about Wolverine's blood, and how they're of the same group but not the same type. The lady, the vampire hunter, tells him like, hey, you guys are rising, but so are the vampires. You guys have Charles Xavier, but they have Dracula. We see Omega Red all healed up, and he's able to leave Krakoa, and he actually meets up with Dracula. And prior to this, we see Dracula getting like blood transfusions, and I believe Wolverine's blood, and he's out during daytime. Dracula doesn't go out during daytime. He sees Omega Red, and he actually gives him the carbonadium synthesizer. If you don't know what the carbonadium synthesizer is, that is a mouthful, but it's basically like this thing. It can produce carbonadium and control carbonadium, which Omega Red's tentacles are made out of, and he needs it to like sustain himself, so he doesn't have to kill people anymore. But you know, he probably still will. Who knows? Maybe he has changed. I mean, Apocalypse has changed, so maybe Omega Red will change. At the end of the book, Dracula basically tells Omega Red, you go join the mutants, but you control me, because this carbonadium synthesizer, it has a detonator in it, so if you disobey me, you're gonna blow up, dog. So yeah, that's basically the whole book right there, guys. My whole thing, what I'm thinking, especially from the second part of the book, I'm thinking that Wolverine's blood, whatever it does, it fights off the vampire infection. So I'm thinking when they consume Wolverine's blood, they can go out in the sunlight. It's fighting off the vampire infection. Maybe it takes away some of the weaknesses that vampires have. But there's no other way that Dracula could be out in sunlight than if he didn't just have this Wolverine blood transfusion. So maybe he's gonna try to synthesize Wolverine's blood, something crazy like that. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking, guys. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if you've read this book, what you think, if you got any variants of this, which variants you got. Let me know your theories and your speculations on where you think this series is heading, of course. And if I missed anything that you wanted me to go over or anything, just leave it in the comments down below and I'll be sure to get to it. I'm really glad that there's a Wolverine solo series right now. I think I've been buying a lot of Wolverine trades recently, and it's like Wolverine and Batman and Spider-Man are like my favorite things to read now. I'm just in such a Wolverine mood. I am so glad. That's pretty much it, guys. If you liked the video, leave me a thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want, subscribe. I always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.